Sometimes it's a huge privilege to interview a podcast, people who run podcasts who you look up to, and that's an opportunity which I have gotten today. Hello, I am Vatsal Vora and today I am here to interview Dwaipayan Mukherjee and Anukarsh Jain, who run a very popular football-related podcast in India named Indie Football Podcast. So basically, before I hand it over to you, Anukarsh, let me just briefly talk and say what I have understood that your podcast does. Basically, you want to hear stories from fans rather, as they are the most important people when it comes to the footballing industry. It's not the players or the manager, it's the fans who make football as far as you guys are concerned, and you want to hear their background stories. So is that right? Can you just briefly talk about what the podcast is actually about?
Yeah, man, absolutely. First of all, Vatsal, thank you for having us here on board. We are both delighted to have to be here. And
Yes.
to be very honest, like the indie football podcast, if I say that it has a basic agenda, then that would be wrong. Honestly, the indie football podcast is about stories. It's
Yes.
about see football. It's for the fans, by the fans, and of the fans, right? And that's what me and Dwaipayan believe as the core values of the Indie Football Podcast. Over the last 1 year, more than that, in fact, Doi and I, we have learned a lot, not only about the football field, but also about the people that have come in, and also through their stories. Like with every guest that has come in, there has been a story associated with them that has left us with an indelible mark, that has
Yeah.
left us with something new, something to ponder upon, something to talk about. And I think that is the crux, that is like the gist of what indie football podcast is all about. Almost every week we have had a new guest, maybe someone who doesn't really have a much of a social media following but is very much into the game, is say a Liverpool fan or a Tottenham fan, or a Chelsea fan, or someone who is very much into the at the top of the sports and broadcasting chain, like
Yes.
someone like Manas Singh, who works for Sony, or someone like Samara Hunter for that matter, who came on Geo Cinema during the World Cup in India, or who works for La Liga TV pretty regularly. So we've had a vast array of guests, and everyone has taught us. But more than that, I think more than the guests, it's been about like for me personally, if you ask me, it's been about the wonderful friendship and bond that I have
Yes.
garnered in the past 1 year with Doi. Because like the thing is that every time I talk to him, made with through the podcast or made with generally, I learn something out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is what having a good co-founder or a good co-host is all about. And that is what keeps us going every day, because it's not that we don't have setbacks. Sometimes there are weeks when
Yeah.
when we really feel like stopping, or when we really feel like pausing, but then that is like each other's energy just getting us through the obstacles. And because we
Yeah.
are in here for the long term, and we are in here to win.
Well, I'm coming to Dwaipa and relating to this. Can you just briefly tell me how do you find these guests? And I feel like it could be a more collective effort, but more importantly, how, like, I feel like one story would never be the same, right? Two stories would never be the same. Like, you always learn something new from each and every fan. Is that what you have learned so far in your journey together?
Yeah, absolutely. To specifically address your question where you ask us about how do we go about
Yes.
our way finding fans, I will take you back to when we started the podcast. And we just sat down and think, okay, so all we know is that we want to make a football podcast. The
Yeah.
first five episodes were us just talking about football, and in the sixth episode, there's an interested mosquito also here who wants to know our story. But
Oh,
by the
everyone's
sixth
welcome.
Absolutely. By the sixth episode, we were like, I think after a period of time, people will stop listening to people just talking about football all the time. Let's
Yeah,
try inviting people coming in. So the initial thoughts behind it was हमारे episode, हमारे who is going to come to our podcast initially. So let's just start off by calling our friends. The first
yes,
10, 15 podcasts ever since were about our friends. Then we saw with our social media presence growing with different people trying to reach out to us and asking are there any ways for us to be a part of your podcast. And then a lot of it, I'll say 70% of it is how we get fans contacting us to be a
makes
part
sense.
of this episode, which for us as co-founders is great. But there's also another part to it where I and Anukarsh keep talking about it. Like, if indie football podcast wants to grow as a brand, wants to grow as a presence, in the end of last year, Spotify comes up with its global, annual records. You
Yeah,
were the top 20% in your section of podcasts. And I know it's sort of coming second in a class of five people because there aren't a lot of football podcasts in India right now. But it's
makes
kind of
sense.
like the blue ocean strategy, right? We want to explore areas that has not yet happened in India. There's a lot of football, there's a lot of interest in football, but the football fans need a platform to voice their opinions. And as I was speaking earlier, the brand comes in by reaching out to bigger people like Anukash mentioned, Manas Singh, Semra Hunter. Largely, we do want to surround ourselves with people coming from different backgrounds, and the only thing common is football and how football has resonated with them, how
Yes,
it's made their lives better,
yes.
and how we can play a small role in making it even better for all the stakeholders involved.
There's a very interesting point you made that there are like more and more fans, trying to get in touch with you to share their side of the story, which brings me to the all important question is regarding this podcast, which I wanted to discuss it with you guys, is how has the footballing culture changed in India particularly? I think majority, like let's say 80% of your podcast would be Indian listeners, or based in India some way or the other, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I'm
Right, right.
wrong, then
Yeah, yeah.
I can't guess the statistical side of an
No,
analytic
no,
side
you're
of.
right. You're right. You're right. There's a reason it's called the indie football podcast.
Yeah, exactly, that is a giveaway that you want to focus on the Indian footballing culture rather than getting out of the boundaries. So I feel like there has been a change in the footballing culture for the better, but I want to hear from the perspective of you guys who actually are in the front running in this culture, as in this small pop culture which we have developed. Because from someone like when I hand this assignment to my professors, they have a mindset that India is a cricketing nation, and all we talk about is cricket, which is partially true. I can't blame them for thinking that way, but I want your opinion on how football culture is being developed in this country. uh,
So
Anukarsh, you can share your thoughts.
yeah, yeah, sure. So thing is that see, over the last 1 year, we have, as I mentioned, we have had a guests coming in from different backgrounds, and it's like this that with football, the awareness has been growing in the last few years. Definitely, no two ways about that. People are talking about it. I mean, uh, we see with every passing FIFA football World Cup, we see how people in India are talking about it. It's being covered more in the local news. People know more about the players. Like initially, there was a time when people just used to know about Messi and Ronaldo, like like
Yes,
the majority, like the common average Indian football fan, right? But now people know about the other players. People know about the other players coming in, and it's because the awareness of the game is increasing. And with time, like with the onset of the Indian of the ISL, and all the media coverage associated with it, the money being flown into it, all these things I think have really added. And uh, personally, I feel the standard of football in this country is increasing. But then again, like some of the people in our podcast have talked about, podcast episodes have talked about that the change needs to happen at the grassroots level.
Okay.
You cannot really expect that, a 17 or an 18-year-old footballer to reach the level of, say, someone really world class. I'm not saying Erling Haaland level, but I'm saying someone who, can really
Yes.
do well at an international stage. So for that, you need to nurture those kids who are into the game at, say, 5 or 6 years old, or like 7 or 8 years old, because after that, it's difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying it's relatively much more difficult when
Hmm.
it comes to a physical game like football. So, and I think in this country, like, we as Indians were flexible with the with the sport we love. For a lot of people tend to forget it, but we used to be a country crazy about hockey
Yeah.
when it came to the time about when our grandparents were about in our age, or like,
Yeah.
when some of us, like some of our parents were in their early age. But then we saw how in the 1983 World Cup, they talk about that. Of course, though you would be able to explain it better, but they talk about that one innings played by Kapil Dev against Zimbabwe, which, really changed the fortune of Indian
Yeah.
cricket. So I think it's like these little moments that can really spark a domino effect for me. And I think football is starting to see those little sparks coming. What particular reaction sparks that domino effect, I really don't know. But I think the sparks are there to see, and good things are coming. That's what I can
Yeah.
say. We're talking to an Indian footballer like Manisha Kalyan, who came on our podcast and was the first Indian player to play in the Champions League. There's positivity. There's a lot of
Okay.
positivity coming in. It's all about the next generation seizing onto it,
Yeah.
because with the money coming in, with the advertising coming in, we can expect a lot of good and fruitful things in the time to come.
Like I that's a good point you made, that we are still gradually climbing the ladder of football becoming mainstream in India, and you said we need to have some development in the grassroots level. So I want to have Dwaipayan's view on this. Do you think there is still a lot of scope for football and the footballing culture to develop in India? I Do you think it has already started and there's a long way to go before it becomes mainstream, or do you think it is already mainstream in our culture?
Yes, I think Anukarsh did cover the major aspects of when it comes to the footballing culture that we want to inculcate as Indians, as a country of 140 crore people. I just
Yes.
fail to imagine that we can't possess the number of footballing talent or prowess that all the international football clubs have. Now, I've been in Mumbai for a while now, studying sports management, and football has been the
Nice.
center of most of what I've so far. So there, I feel even Chelsea. So Chelsea, the global fan engagement team of Chelsea was in Mumbai in this last weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They went to a screening for the Chelsea Everton match. They went to Dharavi, which is Asia's biggest slum. So first of all, when you ask this question at the beginning to Anukarsh about, the footballing culture in India, let alone the indie football podcast, the Premier League is spending a lot of money to, try to
Yeah.
bring out that footballing culture in our country. Of course, they have some vested interests to leverage the population that India has.
Makes
But
sense.
no, irrespective of the population of a place, you can only activate fan engagement opportunities only when people follow the sport. So that really goes forward to tell us how much interest there is for football, and it's a golden period, I'll say, because when again in our college we are most many times we are taught about the factors influencing the growth of a sport, and one of those factors is about how there has to be an institutional support for the sport to grow, whether it's government institutions or private institutions. And now we are seeing more and more corporate giants looking into sport as
Yes.
ways to not only grow it for their marketing reasons but also for football to grow. So I think
Yeah.
it's a vast ocean out there, and we are only holding drops of water in our hands so far.
Wow, that's a lovely example which you gave about an ocean and a drops which we are just holding in our hands. Because to be honest with you, I always felt like there is a huge scope of football in India, because even the Premier League is like Premier League and other teams and clubs around the world have understood how big a market we are, and we are like still untouched in in that region. We like there's a lot of potential for these clubs to set up their academies and stuff. I think one of the prime example I can think is that is Mumbai City like partially owned by the City Group now, like the Manchester City, if I'm not wrong.
Yes,
Is that the
yes.
so
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah.
so absolutely.
Yeah, so if you guys have any knowledge about whether they are you know investing in the ground grassroots level, or are they just here to nurture talents, is that the reason why they have invested heavily in Mumbai City FC?
So there are two sides to the coin, because
Okay.
I'm sure had Anukarsh also been here in Mumbai, he also would have seen it. But here, by staying in Mumbai and learning of all these sporting developments over here,
Yes.
uh, many, the City Group is behind Mumbai City FC right now. So most
Yeah.
of the publications that go out around the Mumbai City is people who are handling the City Group, and they constantly monitor the progress made over here. If you speak about investments made in the footballing talent, one key development that I'd like to notice, that I'd like to bring it up here, is Bangalore FC collaborating with many Indian football academies
Okay.
to make an age group curriculum. Like they hold trials for under 7, under 11, under 13. They are appointing people now to come up with players who can join a proper residential program. So a residential program in sports is something that the Indian sports culture is yet to imbibe. People won't even know what a proper residential program for athletes of the age group is all about. So it's like a school where you go into, you get up in the morning, everything that you do is closely monitored. But all these
Nice.
things are in consistency with what Anukarsh mentioned at the beginning, which is grassroots. So
Yeah.
this is a really exciting phase. And what makes me personally more exciting, all of it, is that India is unique. So whatever has
Yeah.
worked in England might not, we might not necessarily have a one-to-one extrapolation of it. There are certain aspects that will work, and there are certain aspects that we as Indian sports enthusiasts want to discover on our own. So that's
Yeah.
also a very interesting part of our podcast that I'd like to inculcate at some point of time. But yeah, that's an
So
interesting conversation that we're speaking.
with all these things that we have discussed for the last 10 or minutes or so, I feel like there is a large scope of development when it comes to football. But Anukash, what do you think is the future? Like, give me your thoughts on the short term future, and what do you think would be the long term future? Like short term future in the next 3 to 5 years, but is it a long game which Indian football is playing? Like, let's grind it out right now and wait for couple of like decades to see how the fruits have been, like how sweet the fruits are bearing, or do you think it's something much more bigger than that?
See, I think it's very much a long game because I think AIFF have come up with the plan for the which is in some year in 2047 or 2044, somewhere around that, and
Okay.
they've come up with a proper plan in which they plan to be among the two or three Asian teams in the world, and like they have made certain
Who
plans
has
with
made this plan again?
AIFF, the All India
Oh,
Football
okay.
Federation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is that like there are a lot of things associated with it, and I think for me it is the most structured plan so far, in which they plan to build stadiums, they plan to build more academies, kind of just ameliorate the whole football structure at the grassroots level to the to how they are planning to increase the revenue in the game and all. So of course, like there are steps in the right direction, but then that is the thing. Like it's something which Doi and I keep on talking about with regards to our podcast also. So I don't blame the administrators, like for not having done it all so aptly, because sometimes the plan doesn't really match the execution. So
Yes.
it's about bridging that gap and being able to kind of find that corollary that can transcend to transcend to an environment where footballers can develop, where an environment can be created where young footballers can get the right sort of tools to match the talents in other countries and where they can fulfill their potential.
Hmm.
So see, so coming back to the question, see in the next 2 or 3 years, uh, I see what I feel is that again, like players are getting known in the country. Like a lot of people now, people used to know about Baichung Bhutia only a few years back.
Yeah.
Now people know about Sunil Shetty and there's this player Lallang Zuala Changte. He's someone very popular in Indian football right now. So players are coming in, and I think in the next 2 3 years, I see more Indian players becoming relatively more household names.
Makes
I
sense.
see the
Yes.
sport getting more popular because if I say that the India will be in the top 50 or top, see that is something which I can hope for. Like Qatar, for that matter, as you
Yeah.
might know that they were able to elevate their world ranking by a lot just in their years leading up to the World Cup. But then that is, I think, a very one-off scenario, one-off case sort of a scenario. I would, of course, want that to happen. But to be more realistic, because I've been a realistic football, I've been a football fan since 2006.
Wow.
So I know that no matter how much I say that, that India will be in the top 10 or top 5, but the fact is that there's some sort of realism which comes with it. But yeah, of course, the dreamer in me won't be dead. The dreamer in me will keep on dreaming, and I see
Yes.
India as a footballing superpower at some point. But for that, we'll have to take those right steps. Take those little steps, those baby steps that can actually help them to reach that level that we have dreamt of.
Yeah.
Because like there was this minister recently who gave a speech in the parliament in the Lok Sabha, I guess, and he said that uh, in the country where we are we are praising Saudi Arabia for beating Argentina in the World Cup. The fact remains that we as a country of 140 crore people cannot produce 11 players who can play in the World Cup on a good level. So it goes to show that there are a lot of things which we have to improve, but definitely we can, because if they can, then definitely we can too.
Yeah. I think that's a good point you made. And I think I have one final question, and I think I'll let Dwaipayan talk about it. Anukarsh briefly mentioned the importance of Bhaichung Bhutia and Sunil Chetri in our footballing uh, uh, footballing atmosphere in India.
Culture.
But
Uh,
I think Sunil Chetri is now approaching his end of in his career. I guess he's like 38, soon turning 39. Who do you think will take the mantle off his hands and take India to another heights? Who do you think is that one player in our current squad?
So I feel I have watched a lot of Mumbai City's matches, the ISL matches here at
Yes,
the Andheri Sports Complex. So
nice.
yeah. So someone like Changte or someone like that guy, I forget whose name, who scored the winner at the ISL final and then took off his shirt, which is a very famous of whatever famous moment in ISL history. But
Yeah,
more than I just want, I can't help but add to what Anukar said at the last answer. The problem with Indian sports, I feel, is that we overpromise and underdeliver. So
oh
that's
yeah,
how we want to sell the sport at the beginning by saying that, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Now, if you ask true football fanatics in India who have followed whatever happens in Indian football for a long time, and I've not been one of them, but I've read a lot about football in the last couple of years, that
nice.
they are not excited. They are not excited too much about the 2047 vision. Yes, they are excited about what's come out, but it's also happened before. Now, the only metric, like, we speak of key performance indicators when it comes to research. So, one of the biggest KPIs is the execution that's going to happen on ground. And the execution more as and it's in relation to the question you asked me, because I understand in India we do a lot of hero worship when it comes to sports,
Yes,
but you in cricket you can still do that, because at the end it's one batsman who can score 100 runs and win you matches. But in football it has to be a group of people. Even if you don't get a Messi or a Ronaldo, you probably get a set of Bayern Munich's team in Indian,
Yes,
in Indian origin, who are probably taking Indian football ahead as a whole. And we are not dependent on one person to be the flag bearer of Indian football. That's not the ideal situation as I watch it. Because
good
if we are
point.
looking only on one player, then that's, in my point, not the success of Indian football. So I look forward to a proper Indian footballing culture where we are able to develop many players who can contribute at different
Yes.
paths.
It's like basically what I am understanding is you don't want, like, in terms of, let's say I'm a teacher, I don't want one student to get 10 out of 10 and the rest to fail. I want everyone to get, 7 or 8 out of 10, basically,
Absolutely.
if that's the right example I can give. There's no point in being just one
So
good
that
and
even without the 10 out of 10 guys.
yeah, exactly. So I completely understand. I think before we wrap things up, let's end it on a lighter note. And I want, like in the next 5 minutes, just a couple of quick questions to Anukarsh and Dwaipan. Anukarsh, your favorite football team and your favorite football player growing up. Let's end it on
You
a
know it,
lighter note.
you
I'm
know it,
going to
Vatsal.
answer this. No, no, let not let's, I mean, I will ask you to do it one step further and ask us to answer for each other, because
Oh
we work
yes.
in an indie football podcast, and I've probably
Oh,
heard it
that's a
100
great
You know,
times.
idea.
So growing up,
it's a tough to
so
I don't know
growing
if
up
I know.
currently, till the time he dies, he's gonna be a Liverpool fan, and
Nice.
he probably Jake Steven, he goes to see Steven Gerrard's poster every day in the morning and says, please Steven sir, so that the day is my day goes great. So Anukarsh,
Oh,
sir, you can go ahead and tell my.
yeah. Okay. Okay. That was a good point.
Yeah. For Dwaipayan, okay. So this is slightly tough to answer because I know his favorite team is Real Madrid that way, and I know, but of course,
Oh,
he likes Arsenal too, and even likes. But then for his favorite football player, I think that is the part where I'm in a bit of a pickle, to be very
oh, come
honest.
on.
But I think it has to be uh,
Friendship
Ronaldo.
ending. Which one? Which one?
Yeah.
It is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Because,
Oh,
and just so that so many listeners don't think I'm a plastic fan, or yeah, I'm supporting two different clubs. It's just
no.
that I started. It's just that I started following football very late in my life, and
Yeah.
I have been smart enough to understand you truly enjoy a sport the most when you don't recite your allegiances to one particular team. So
See, that's another way of looking
I
at things.
feel
Yes. And to be honest with you, these two teams, I like very recently I have like become a two team player as well, because similar to Anukarsh, I started watching football in like 2009-10 season was my first one, and I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm still a Liverpool fan, but since coming to Swansea, I've like gotten a soft spot for them as well. Like sometimes you just because they are my local team, I want them to do well, but that doesn't make me like a lesser of a Liverpool fan or and more of a Swansea fan, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, Swansea had a great story a few years back. I think almost a decade back, they had a really good team. They had Gylfi Sigurdsson on loan
Yes,
from Hoffenheim. They had Joe Allen, who had a 98% passing rate in one of the
yes.
seasons, and Wilfred Boli later came in. Michu had a
Michu had
really
a
good
good season.
season.
Yes,
You could call him a one season wonder, but he scored some around 20 goals, and some of the goals were like out
yeah.
of this world. People couldn't
There was
believe how he
there was
was
this
that good.
one there was this one article, I don't remember who wrote it or which platform was it published on, but I remember them saying they wear white clothes, right? So when they were like in that peak Premier League, like mid-table club, it was the article was written, Swansea City dress like Real Madrid, play like Barcelona.
so. I think your mic is unmute, yeah, Anukarsh
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was a reason for it. Actually, I got a false start. Yeah.
No
So
problem, sorry.
the reason for that was that Brendan Rodgers, the manager at that time, he had worked under Jose Mourinho, and he
Yes.
loved tiki taka sort of football when it came to his tactics. That is why they were compared to Barcelona for that matter.
Yeah, I'm sorry we have to like cut short this interview here because of Zoom's 40-minute limit. But before we wrap things up, I've had a lovely chat. I didn't even realize where the
Yeah.
last 40 minutes passed away. Like when I got that 10-minute warning, I was like, oh God, is it like 30 minutes already? But credit
Yeah.
to both Anukarsh and Dwaipayan. Like you guys, like the insight which you have given me about football, particularly talking about grassroots football, talking about how Premier League is investing, particularly the point you made about, having having multiple good players other than just one good player for the growth of the nation was out of this world. And like I have so much content to write about that I'm going to struggle to pick what my article will be based on.
Yeah,
And that's a good
that's
problem
that's
to have.
exactly that's exactly what we wanted you. We we wanted to make your life a bit hard.
Yeah, oh, I'm all up for it. And thank you to the Indie Football Podcast for giving me this platform. Also, thanking the Swansea University as well for giving me a chance to make this assignment, talking to some of the best for Indian football podcasters. And thank you to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.